The female pilot gripped her phone tightly as she spoke into it, her voice sharp with urgency. "I'm telling you, there's a black teenager causing trouble in the pilot's lounge. Send security. Now." Then she turned toward him. "You need to leave, right now. You don't belong here." The sound of Captain Dana Mercer's voice echoed across the lounge as she towered over 16-year-old Noah Williams. His visitor badge hung from a bright red lanyard around his neck as he tried to speak, voice shaking. "Ma'am, I'm just waiting for my guide. She told me I could sit here." "I don't care what she told you," Mercer snapped. "This area is for authorized personnel only." She was already reaching for her radio. "Security to the pilot's lounge. I have an unauthorized individual who needs to be removed immediately." The fear in Noah's eyes was unmistakable. All he had done was sit quietly, watching a documentary about aviation. Was that really a crime? Before we go further, if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter their background or the color of their skin, drop a comment and hit that subscribe button, because what happens next might just change everything. At just 16, Noah Williams knew more about airplanes than most junior pilots. He could identify commercial aircraft by engine noise alone. While other teens plastered their bedroom walls with pop star posters or sports memorabilia, Noah's walls were covered with flight maps, cockpit diagrams, and black and white photos of aviation pioneers. Flying wasn't just a dream to him. It was a destiny, etched into his heart since the age of 8, when his mom first took him to an air show. He remembered it like it was yesterday. The deafening roar of a fighter jet slicing through the sky, the awe in the crowd, and the way his chest swelled as he whispered, "That's what I want to do." And today was supposed to be the first real step toward that dream. Noah had won a spot in the highly selective Horizon Discovery Day, a program designed to expose passionate young students to the behind-the-scenes world of commercial aviation. He had beaten out hundreds of applicants with an essay titled, "The Sky Has Room for Everyone." His words weren't flashy or dramatic. They were thoughtful, grounded, and full of determination. Just like him. That morning had already felt like a dream. He'd gotten to visit the control tower, speak with ground operations crews, and walk the jet bridge of a Boeing 787. But it wasn't just sightseeing. Noah came prepared. He asked insightful questions about thrust-to-weight ratios, weather routing systems, and even contingency planning for mid-flight tech failures. Not once did he pull out his phone or zone out. He was focused, engaged, and glowing with quiet pride. Miss Harper, the HR coordinator assigned to lead his tour, had noticed. "Honestly," she said with a smile as they entered the operations wing, "you're asking questions I don't usually hear from second-year trainees." Noah had chuckled, slightly shy. "My mom always says if you want something badly enough, you better know it inside and out." Miss Harper's smile deepened. "She sounds like a wise woman." They continued the tour, chatting as they passed bustling dispatchers and flight planners immersed in screens. But just as they reached the pilot's lounge, a quiet, carpeted room with soft chairs and a large TV mounted on the wall, Miss Harper's phone buzzed. She checked the screen and her expression shifted slightly. "Oh no. Noah, I'm so sorry. There's a personnel issue I have to handle right away. It shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Noah nodded quickly. "That's totally fine." She pointed toward the lounge. "There's a great documentary playing right now about the evolution of commercial aviation. Really well done. You can wait in here. No one will bother you." Noah's eyes lit up. "Thank you. Just stay put," she said, already stepping away. "I'll be back before you know it." And just like that, she was gone. Noah stepped into the lounge, his visitor badge dangling from his neck. The room was calm, the lights low, the faint hum of the television filling the space. He chose a seat in the corner near the window, where he could still glimpse the tails of aircraft lined up on the tarmac outside. The documentary captivated him almost immediately. Vintage footage of early propeller planes, voiceovers about innovation, risk, and the pioneers who challenged gravity. He sat there quietly, absorbing it all, feeling, for the first time in his life, like he truly belonged in this world. He didn't notice as the room slowly emptied, as pilots filtered out to prepare for flights. He was too focused, too inspired, too in his element, but someone else was about to walk into the lounge. Someone who wouldn't see a bright, respectful, aviation-obsessed teenager. Someone who would only see a problem. And for Noah, the skies were about to darken. The lounge had grown quiet. Noah didn't notice at first. He was too absorbed in the documentary flickering on the screen, a segment about the evolution of jet propulsion, narrated with calm reverence. The footage shifted from grainy black and white to crisp color as the voiceover spoke of barriers broken, risks taken, and skies conquered. For Noah, it was more than a history lesson. It was a promise, a future. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, eyes wide with wonder. Outside the glass window behind him, the afternoon light cast golden streaks across the tarmac. Pilots had slowly filtered out of the lounge over the past half hour, each heading toward pre-flight checklists and departure gates. By the time the door opened again, Noah was the only one left. He didn't turn around. The woman who entered paused just past the threshold. She stood tall, crisp uniform pressed to perfection, her rolling luggage clicking softly against the carpet. Her sharp blue eyes scanned the room and locked onto him. Her name was Captain Dana Mercer. 23 years in the air, 10,000 flight hours logged, and a security incident 5 years ago that had changed the way she viewed unfamiliar faces in restricted spaces. She didn't recognize the boy. Young, alone, black, sitting in the pilot's lounge. And that was all it took. No words of greeting, no questions, just suspicion. Fast and fierce. She strode toward him, each step precise. Noah sensed someone approaching and looked up, startled. He blinked at her, unsure whether to smile or stand. "Excuse me," she said, voice cold. "What are you doing in here?" Noah straightened in his seat. "I'm part of the Horizon Discovery Day. My guide had to step out. She said I could wait here." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "Who's your guide?" "Miss Harper, from HR." The name meant nothing to her. She took a slow breath, then said, louder this time, "This lounge is for authorized personnel only." Noah nodded quickly. "I have a visitor badge, see?" He reached for the lanyard around his neck and held up the laminated pass with both hands, like it might explain everything. But Mercer didn't even glance at it. Her expression hardened. "That doesn't give you access to this lounge." "But she said." "I don't care what she said," Mercer snapped, cutting him off. "You don't belong here." Noah's throat tightened. "Ma'am, I didn't mean to. I'm just watching the aviation." "Where did you get that badge?" she demanded, stepping closer. "Where did you steal it from?" The word steal hit him like a slap. Noah blinked. "No, I didn't steal it. It's mine. They gave it to me this morning. I wrote the essay. I was selected." Mercer reached for her radio. "Security to the pilot's lounge. I've got an unauthorized individual, possible breach. I need immediate assistance." Noah's mouth went dry. He looked around the empty room, the silent TV, the quiet hallway outside. He wasn't sure if this was really happening. He had done exactly what he was told. He wasn't hiding, wasn't sneaking. Just sitting, watching, dreaming. But now, he was being treated like a threat. His fingers trembled as he clutched the lanyard still hanging around his neck. "Please," he said softly. "I didn't do anything wrong." Mercer didn't respond. She was already turning away, radio still in hand, her back rigid with certainty. And somewhere deep in Noah's chest, something small cracked. A fear he had read about, heard about, but never expected to feel this sharply. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. Captain Mercer didn't hesitate. With a sharp flick of her hand, she reached forward and ripped the lanyard from around Noah's neck. The plastic clip snapped with a loud crack, the badge falling into her palm like evidence in a courtroom. Noah flinched. He hadn't expected that. His hand instinctively reached up to his now empty collar. The spot where the lanyard had been moments ago felt exposed, vulnerable. Mercer held the badge up to the light, turning it over slowly, like she was trying to catch it lying to her. "This looks fake," she muttered. Then louder, "Who gave this to you? Be honest, did you make it yourself?" Noah stared at her, his mouth slightly open. For a second, the words wouldn't come. His heart was pounding, not from guilt, but from the shock of being accused of something he didn't even understand. "I told you," he finally stammered. "Miss Harper gave it to me. This morning. I'm part of the Discovery program. I wrote an essay. I was selected." His voice trailed off when he saw the look in her eyes. Cold, dismissive, unmoved. It didn't matter what he said. She had already decided who he was. "Security, this is Captain Mercer again," she said into her radio, her voice tighter now. "The individual appears to have forged credentials, possible security breach. I need immediate backup. Now." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Noah's stomach dropped. He could barely breathe. Forged? Security breach. He glanced at the badge still in her hand. His photo. His name. The official Horizon Airlines logo stamped in silver foil. It was real. It was his. It had been a symbol of pride just an hour ago. Now in her hands it looked tainted. Dangerous. His thoughts began to spiral. If they believe her, what happens to me? Will they call the police? Will I be arrested? Will this go on my record? Will I lose my scholarship? My future? My dream? The air in the lounge felt heavier now, pressing down on his chest. He tried to steady his breath, but it came out shallow, ragged. And then, as Mercer turned her back to speak into her radio again, Noah's mind retreated, desperately, instinctively, to a memory. He was 8 years old, standing on the bleachers at the annual city air show. His mom beside him, shielding his eyes from the glare as they looked up into the open sky. A jet roared overhead, slicing a perfect arc across the clouds. He remembered the way the wind rushed past, the way his heart jumped, the way everything else disappeared in that moment. "That's what I want to do," he had whispered. And his mom, without hesitation, had smiled and said, "Then that's what you'll do." That single sentence had carried him through every science fair, every book on aviation history, every long night on his flight simulator. It had carried him all the way to this lounge, to this badge, to this day. And now one misunderstanding, one misjudgment was threatening to erase all of it. Noah blinked back tears. He couldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of her. He looked up and tried again. "Please," he said softly, "I didn't do anything wrong." Captain Mercer didn't even turn around. Somewhere in the hallway beyond, footsteps echoed. Security was coming. And as Noah sat there, alone, misunderstood and afraid, he realized this wasn't just about a badge, or a lounge, or a misunderstanding. This was about the world he thought he was stepping into, and the door that was now being slammed shut. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that someone was already on their way, and everything was about to change. The footsteps grew louder, heavy, purposeful, echoing off the sterile hallway tiles like distant thunder before a storm. 2 uniformed security officers stepped into the pilot's lounge, alert, focused, unaware of the full story, but already assuming the worst. Captain Mercer turned toward them, hand still gripping Noah's badge. Her stance was stiff, her voice louder now, projecting authority in every syllable. "This is exactly how breaches happen," she said, holding the badge up like a weapon. "Someone sneaks in with a fake pass, starts snooping around, maybe scouting sensitive areas. We're trained to spot threats like him." Like him. The words weren't just about access levels or protocol. They carried something heavier, meaner, older. Noah felt it in the silence that followed. The officers turned to him. One of them gestured for him to stand. Noah rose slowly, his legs stiff, unsure of what was happening or what would come next. From the hallway outside, more people had begun to gather. Airport employees, a few pilots in uniform, a gate agent, even the barista from the nearby coffee kiosk. Drawn in by the commotion, they lingered just outside the doorway, eyes trained on the unfolding scene. No one stepped forward. No one spoke up. No one asked a single question. They just watched. Noah could feel their stares pressing down on him like weights. Some looked confused, others curious. A few seemed vaguely concerned, but none moved to interrupt Captain Mercer's narrative. And that silence, that cold, paralyzing silence, was somehow worse than her words. He stood there, eyes wide, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, while Mercer continued her impromptu lecture to the growing audience. "Post-9/11 protocols are clear," she declared. "We can't just assume someone's harmless because they're young or polite. That's how mistakes happen. That's how disasters happen." She glanced toward the onlookers, seeking agreement, and got it, in the form of a few hesitant nods. Noah turned, scanning the crowd. Searching for Miss Harper, for any familiar face, for someone who might step in and say, "He's not a threat, he's with us." But there was no one. All he saw were blank expressions, folded arms, whispered words just out of earshot, and suspicion. So much suspicion. To them, he wasn't a student. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't even a kid anymore. He was a problem to be managed. He was the incident. And suddenly he felt like he was standing in the middle of a courtroom, not a lounge, with Mercer as the prosecutor. security as the jury, and the quiet crowd outside as a passive, indifferent audience. The documentary on the TV behind him continued to play, muted now. Images of pilots smiling, of planes soaring into the sun, of hopeful futures. It felt cruel. His own future had never felt so fragile. He swallowed hard, trying to hold back the burning behind his eyes. How had things turned so quickly? 1 hour ago, he was a bright young student chasing a dream. Now, he was a suspect, a security threat, an outsider. And the worst part? No one, not one person, had asked him if he was okay. The silence was louder than any accusation. And for the first time in his life, Noah Williams began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the sky wasn't meant for everyone after all. The questions kept coming, sharp, rapid, and without a trace of compassion. Name? Who gave you this badge? How did you get into this area? Are you alone? Noah stood frozen, arms at his sides, his hands trembling slightly. The two security officers didn't shout, but their tone was unmistakable, controlled, procedural, prepared for a threat. Captain Mercer stood a few feet away, still gripping his badge like a piece of contraband. He was snooping, she said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, probably scouting the area, taking photos, maybe trying to access sensitive data. God knows who he's working with. The accusation didn't even feel real. Noah blinked hard, trying to process the words. Snooping? Sensitive data? He had been watching a documentary, sitting in a lounge. I wasn't, he whispered, his voice almost inaudible. I was just waiting for Miss Harper. But no one responded. One officer flipped open a report form. The other turned slightly, eyeing Noah like he might bolt. Do you have someone we can call? The senior one asked. Noah nodded quickly, too quickly, like he had just been offered air after nearly drowning. My mom. Please. Can I call my mom? A pause, a reluctant nod. Make it quick, the officer said, watching closely. Noah's fingers fumbled with his phone. The screen wobbled in his shaky hands as he scrolled to the number that had been on his speed dial since 2nd grade. He pressed call. It rang once, then twice. Then, Noah? His mother's voice came through, concerned. Noah took a deep breath, but his voice cracked anyway. Mom, they think I broke in. They took my badge. I don't know what's happening. Please, can you come to Terminal C, the pilot's lounge? There was silence on the other end, then her voice, urgent, rising. Are you hurt? Did someone touch you? Are you okay? Noah wiped at his face, ashamed of the tear sliding down his cheek. I'm okay, he lied. I need you here. Please come. He ended the call, clutching the phone like it might disappear if he let go. Captain Mercer let out a dry laugh. His mom's probably a janitor, she muttered, not caring who heard. I'll make sure she's fired too. Then maybe her little trespasser won't sneak into secure areas again. A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, but still, no one said anything. No one asked who he really was. No one asked why he was being treated like a criminal. They just watched. A woman in a gate agent uniform chewed her lip, arms crossed tightly. A baggage handler leaned in the doorway, eyes darting between Mercer and the security officers, saying nothing. A junior pilot stood stiff, his gaze fixed on the floor as if ignoring the scene made it disappear. Their silence said enough. Noah's heart pounded, his chest ached, not from fear alone, but from something worse, the realization that no one here was going to help him. Not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't. The officer returned to his form and began writing. Unauthorized presence, possibly falsified credentials, refused to leave when instructed. Each stroke of the pen felt like a permanent mark, on Noah's record, on his future, on everything he'd worked for. He sat back down slowly, the strength in his legs vanishing. His eyes flicked to the muted television still running in the background, now showing young cadets in uniforms, laughing as they climbed into simulators. It felt cruel, distant, like a dream that had belonged to someone else. And for the first time in his life, Noah Williams began to wonder. What if the sky didn't belong to him after all? But what no one in that room realized, not Mercer, not the security officers, not the silent crowd, was that someone had already stepped off the escalator in Terminal C, and the ground beneath them was about to shift. A crackle pierced the room, sharp, sudden. The officer's radio came alive with a voice neither stern nor panicked but composed, urgent. VIP approaching the pilot's lounge. Clear the way. For a split second, everything paused. Then movement. The gate agent who had been standing silently straightened her back, One of the security officers instinctively adjusted his collar. The hallway outside, once filled with low murmurs and lingering onlookers, suddenly snapped to attention. Someone was coming. Noah barely registered the shift. He sat still, numb, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. His phone lay beside him, face down. The incident report still sat open on the clipboard near the officers. But the room was changing. Two figures in tailored black suits entered first, moving with calm authority. They didn't wear airport security uniforms, but earpieces gleamed from beneath their collars, and silver Horizon Airlines pins shone on their lapels. Behind them followed a small cluster of sharply dressed executives, tablets in hand, eyes locked on their screens, murmuring in hushed urgency. And then, she stepped in. Ava Williams. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to announce herself. Her presence did it for her. Her heels clicked once, twice, on the tile before the carpet muted her steps. Her suit, charcoal gray, perfectly cut, didn't demand attention, it commanded it. The pin on her lapel read CEO. But it wasn't just a title, it was history, power, proof of what perseverance could build. She had once been a flight attendant, then a licensed pilot, then a regional operations lead. Now, the majority owner of Horizon Airlines. The room exhaled, but Noah held his breath. She saw him immediately. Her stride slowed as she crossed the lounge, her expression unreadable. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, sharper. She didn't stop until she reached him. And then, everything melted. She dropped to one knee, wrapped her arms around her son, and held him. Not a soft, polite hug, a fierce, protective embrace. The kind only a mother can give. The kind that says, "I've got you now." "You're safe," she whispered. "I'm here." Noah didn't speak. He couldn't. But the way his body leaned into hers, the way his hands finally stopped shaking, that said enough. When she stood, her hand rested gently on his shoulder. Then she turned. Captain Dana Mercer froze. She hadn't seen it coming, hadn't connected the dots. Her face drained of color, her mouth opened, but no sound came. Ava looked directly at her. Her voice was calm, steady, deadly precise. "You accused my son of being a threat." The room fell absolutely silent. "You assumed he didn't belong. You took his badge. You called him a spy." Mercer tried to interject. "I didn't know." "Exactly," Ava said, cutting her off. "You didn't know, because you didn't ask, because you didn't care." She turned toward the officers. "Has his badge been verified?" One of the executives behind her stepped forward, already holding a tablet. "Yes, ma'am. Verified directly with HR. Noah Williams is registered for the Horizon Discovery Program. Miss Thess." Harper confirmed his participation via time-stamped check-in. "The badge is 100% authentic." The silence in the room cracked like glass. Ava nodded. Her voice softened, not in tone, but in temperature. The kind of cold that chills deeper than shouting ever could. "Captain Mercer, I want you to hear this clearly," she said. "You didn't see a young man. You didn't see a student. You saw his color, not his credentials." Mercer's lips moved, but no words came. Her authority, so loudly projected moments ago, evaporated. Ava stepped forward once more, her gaze sharp as a scalpel. "As CEO of this company, I'm placing you on immediate suspension pending internal review. Your access is revoked, effective now." Mercer blinked. "But you mistreated a guest, a child. You used your position to humiliate him in front of a crowd without verifying a single fact." Behind her, the crowd that had once been silent now leaned in, eyes wide, breath held. "That's not leadership, that's not security, that's bias." A senior executive stepped forward, gently but firmly gesturing toward Mercer. "Let's go process your suspension, Captain." Mercer hesitated. Then slowly, visibly smaller than when she had entered, she turned and followed. The room remained still. Noah finally looked up, watching the woman who had just dismantled the lie that almost destroyed him. His mother, his protector, but also something more. A symbol of power that wasn't loud, of justice that didn't beg, of a woman who had once been doubted herself and vowed never to let that happen to her son. Ava turned back to Noah, her voice soft again. "You okay?" Noah nodded, though his voice hadn't returned. And as the lounge slowly began to breathe again, no one doubted it anymore. The balance of power had shifted. And for the first time that day, it had shifted in Noah's favor. But there was still more to uncover, still more truth to speak, still more healing to begin. And Ava Williams wasn't done yet. The lounge was still. But not with tension this time. It was the hush that follows a reckoning. when everyone in the room realizes something important had just shifted. Ava Williams stood in the center, calm and composed, one hand gently resting on Noah's shoulder. But behind her quiet eyes was a storm long silenced, one she had carried for decades. She took a breath, not to calm herself, but to steady the weight of what she was about to say. She didn't need to raise her voice. The room leaned in to listen. "When I was training to become a pilot," she began, "I was the only woman and the only black trainee." Her tone was measured, not emotional, but each word carried the weight of experience. She wasn't just telling her story. She was letting the truth breathe in a room that had forgotten how to hear it. She recalled how her instructor had doubted her from day one. How every mistake she made was used to justify why she didn't belong. How every success was dismissed as luck. She remembered the long nights, the double standards, the constant pressure to be perfect. Not because she wanted to impress, but because one misstep could be used to push her out. And yet, she had stayed. She had climbed. And she had vowed, silently, stubbornly, that one day, if she had the power, she would make sure no child would have to fight that hard just to be seen. She turned slightly, her eyes meeting Noah's. No one should have to carry fear just to follow their dreams. It wasn't a speech, it was a promise, and it landed with the force of something deeply lived. One of the security officers, visibly uncomfortable now, stepped forward. His voice was low but clear. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the security footage." He held up a tablet. The screen showed a quiet image of Noah, alone in the lounge, watching the documentary. Time-stamped, motionless, innocent. There's no indication he did anything wrong. He never left his seat. For a long moment, no one spoke. But something in the air shifted. A silent truth had been confirmed. Ava nodded. There was no triumph in her expression. Just calm finality. The kind that comes when the truth is no longer a debate. She turned to the assembled staff, security, and onlookers. Her voice steady again. Now not as a mother, but as a leader. This company connects people across the world. But today, it failed to connect with one of its own. She spoke not with blame, but clarity. She knew this wasn't just about Noah. It wasn't just about Captain Mercer. It was about the culture that allowed silence to speak louder than action. And so, she made her next move. "Starting today," she said, "we are launching a new program, Future Flyers, a mentorship initiative for young people like Noah, who dream of aviation but too often face barriers they shouldn't have to fight alone." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Every word struck clean and true. She spoke of new standards, mandatory bias training, stronger protections for interns and students, a direct hotline for reporting discrimination, not as punishment, but as progress. Noah stood quietly beside her, taking it all in. He didn't speak, but something in his posture had changed, straighter, steadier. A few moments ago, he had felt erased. Now, he felt seen, and not just by his mother, by the room, by the people who had watched in silence, by a system that had tried to shrink him and was now being forced to expand. Ava placed her hand gently on his back, the message unspoken but loud. "You still belong here." The moment was no longer just about accountability. It was about restoration. And as the room slowly exhaled, something lingered in the air. Not tension, but resolve. Because for the first time all day, the people around Noah didn't just see a teenager. They saw a future pilot. And maybe, just maybe, the sky really did have room for everyone. 1 month later, the pilot's lounge looked different. Gone were the silent, colorless walls that once witnessed injustice without protest. In their place now hung framed portraits of aviation pioneers, black, brown, white, men and women, each one a reminder that dreams have no single face. There were new additions too, a large screen looping footage from the Future Flyers mentorship program. A table stacked with brochures and applications. And in the center of the room stood Noah Williams. He wore the same lanyard, now with a badge that read Youth Ambassador. Not just a visitor this time, but a voice. In front of him sat a group of high school students, their expressions a mix of awe, curiosity, and quiet fear. Noah recognized that fear. He had worn it himself not so long ago. The fear of not being enough. The fear of not being believed. The fear of dreaming too big in a world that might push back. He cleared his throat, took a breath, and began. "When I was your age," he said, "I thought knowing everything about planes would be enough. I thought if I worked hard, followed the rules, and loved flying more than anything, The sky would open up for me. He paused, scanning the group. A girl in the front clutched a notebook tightly. A boy in the back avoided eye contact. One student fiddled nervously with the edge of his sleeve. But one day I sat right over there. He nodded toward the lounge chair, and I learned that sometimes people see your skin before they see your dream. A hush fell over the room. That day almost broke me. But it didn't, because someone showed up who reminded me who I was and who I could still become. He let the words settle. He wasn't trying to inspire. He was simply telling the truth. So if any of you have ever felt like you didn't belong, like you had to prove yourself before anyone even listened, I want you to know you're not alone. He smiled now, something quiet and strong. And the sky, it's still yours. Applause broke out, tentative at first, then stronger. Not because he had performed, but because he had connected. Because in each of those young faces, he had just placed a little piece of belief. After the session ended, students came up to shake his hand, ask questions, take photos. A few stayed back, eyes wide with something unspoken, hope. And when the last student left, a familiar voice called from the hallway. "You ready, Captain?" Noah turned. Captain Amara Johnson, one of Horizon's most respected pilots, stood at the door in full uniform. Tall, graceful, composed. The same pilot who had stepped in that day when the skies around him felt like they were collapsing. Noah walked toward her, his steps no longer tentative. She opened the cockpit door of the Boeing 787, and with a warm smile, gestured him inside. "This is where you belong," she said. The cockpit glowed with soft amber light, buttons, switches, displays, all the magic he had once only seen in photos and flight simulators now surrounded him. He sat down beside her in the co-pilot's seat. His fingertips brushed the throttle. His eyes scanned the flight controls. But what moved him most was the view. Through the thick glass window, the sky stretched wide and open, brilliant blue, streaked with soft clouds. It looked different today. Not just beautiful, inviting. Noah smiled, then looked over at Captain Johnson. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. "Someday this will be yours to fly." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the aircraft beneath them, the promise of altitude ahead. And outside, the horizon waited, unchanged, but somehow more reachable. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps our team inspired to keep creating meaningful stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.